Oh, did I? I don't know. I'm on.
Commissioner Starrett, are you there? And Christian? Can you say something so we make sure we hear you?
Testing. Testing.
There you go. Commissioner Sterry, you can hear us okay?
Hello, hello.
We can hear you.
I can, thank you.
Great. Okay, welcome to the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal informal session for February 23rd, 2023. It is 10:06 in the morning. And Jody, would you please lead us in the pledge?
The United States of America, and to the republic and under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you everyone for braving the snow and being here. Item C is our calendar session. Tonight, the Newburgh City County Dinner has been canceled. So if you didn't get that memo or email, that is now off the calendar due to weather. Retirement party for Dana Corelli is Monday, the 27th from 3 to 5 here in room 32. And then there's a family place event in Newburgh on March 2nd, correct? 4:30. Okay, so I think we've got a couple commissioners going to that, so we can send that over. I think that's it on my end. Anything to add to the calendar?
Just in case anybody's going to, well, that's probably already been noticed for tomorrow. That is the Local Government Advisory Committee, but that's Friday. Oh, never mind. Thank you.
Sorry, Commissioner, Local Government Advisory Committee for AOC?
Yes.
Okay.
Four PM for the groundbreaking on March 2nd.
Okay.
Newburgh.
Okay, anything to add to calendar? No? Okay. All right, item D is public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. We did receive one written comment that has been emailed to commissioners. If anyone in the audience has public comment, feel free to come forward. If you are online, please raise your virtual hand. Oh, Howie, so I will call you up when we get to that item. Sorry, thank you. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item E, which is our committee updates. We have a Road Improvement Advisory Committee, or RIAC, annual report from our chair, Adam Zabinski. Is Adam here? Welcome, Mr. Zabinski. And Commissioner Johnston, you are now the liaison for RIAC.
Correct.
Replacing Casey Kula, so. Let's see. Yeah, so we received your annual report and read through it, but
primarily I'm
proceed.
here to just reemphasize what we do and get a little face time with the commissioners who are not our liaison.
Sounds
We do
good.
this each year. So we were formed in the Road Improvement Advisory Committee was formed in 1976, basically to help the Public Works Department and the Board of Commissioners on all things relating to roads and ultimately transportation within the county. We meet once a month and at Public Works offices, and we work on a number of things. In recent years, certainly with COVID time and all, the emphasis has been primarily on doing bridges and focusing on that. Another item where we're able to use or make available to us is the staff on doing ditches and clearing around the different roads in the county. because it's important to maintain the substructure, because if that's poor, then the superstructure, which is the paved part that we all ride on, deteriorates much more rapidly. Public Works has done a number of things in recent years, which we and the committee support wholeheartedly in terms of the effort that the staff has put in. We would make a pitch as a committee that we would always like Public Works Department to have more staff to do more of the things, because there's a balance of time and money allocations for things that can be done. I assume since you received the report, you've read it. I don't know if there's any particular things that you want to focus on. One of the things we've been very happy about in recent years is active engagement with George Fox. When in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, we identify intersections and sections of road that need to be or should be focused upon. We've been able to avail the engineering students from George Fox each year to tackle one intersection or another. Often we are able to implement the recommendations. Sometimes the solutions are more expensive than there is money available to us in a given year. But that's really one of the great programs with the county and interaction with our department. So like I said, the committee gets together, we advise Public Works, we review the budget. It works really well. It's a good, smooth system. We obviously have disagreements, but we do come to consensus. And with that, I will stop talking and open to any questions that you may have, and I'll try to answer them.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Concerns? I'm just impressed with the kind of the diversity of what you guys tackle between, you know, the road issues and then the vegetation and the habitat conservation and, you know, the heavy lift with the TMDL is it policy that went into effect this year. So it's a lot.
In
It's a lot
recent
you
years,
tackle.
the vegetation has become it's a subcommittee of the overall committee, but they're the ones that get into the weeds literally
Yeah.
and figuratively. And we've been focusing with that subcommittee on both native plants that we want to keep and invasive plants that we want to get rid of, working with interns in Public Works. We've been able to map a system that's now on the GIS so that the ones that we wish to keep when we're doing roadside maintenance in Public Works, there are times of the year when you don't want to be spraying certain of the native plants. And so we know where they are and we can avoid them. We're just trying to encourage those populations. So they've done a great job over the years. Michael Wirt, who is our vice chair of the committee and wasn't able to attend today, serves as the chair of that subcommittee and does, and quite frankly, she's the author of the annual report. We'd be lost without her.
Great. Well, if there's no questions, Commissioner Starrett, make sure I.
Yes, I want to thank Mr. Zabinski. I, at one point, was the liaison to RIAC and got to see the dynamic of the group, a very able and involved group. You mentioned Michael Wirt, and you mentioned all the other people that are really very qualified. And thank you for the work that's being done. It's very time consuming, but we.
Great, thank you. I don't think there's anything further. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you for
Appreciate
the
it.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you for serving with the county. Okay, that brings us to department updates. Today we have Joe Moore, or we don't have Joe Moore.
Actually, Joe has a lot going on this morning, so he's not available this morning, and so
Okay.
we'll reschedule a facilities update for a later date.
Sounds good. Busy day. Okay. Okay, item G is our work session. We have nothing today for work session. Item H is our consent agenda. I will move to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Item I1, old business, is consideration of adoption of the written findings in the matter of upholding the Planning Commission's decision to approve planning docket number P-10-22, partition application for tax lot 4512-01600. The applicant is Jonathan Jonke. I will move approval of item I1. Is there further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Item J1 is discussion, other business. Item J1 is discussion of City of McMinnville's request for a county emergency declaration related to McMinnville homelessness. This was placed on the agenda by Commissioner Starrett. And we do have a public comment to start off with. So I'm going to start with public comment, and then Commissioner, if you want to sort of kick us off, we can go from there. So Mr. Harkema, if you want to come forward. Thank you. And if you could state your name and address for the record, we appreciate it.
Be glad to. Howie Harkema, 214 Northwest 15th Street, McMinnville, Oregon, 97128. So good morning, Board of Commissioners, County Council, and staff. Thank you for this opportunity during comment period. My name is Howie Harkema. I'm the founder and president of Encompass Yamhill Valley, a nonprofit organization working with our Yamhill County houseless neighbors. We at Encompass work with the most vulnerable populations with boots on the ground. I'm here to beseech this board to do the right thing regarding making Yamhill County a houseless emergency county. In doing such, Governor Tina Kotek funding could assist with many endeavors across Yamhill County. I do not believe that we want to look like Portland, Seattle, Los Angeles, etc., or even Salem or Eugene. By your emergency declaration and funding stream could come help so many nonprofits and cities such as Sheridan, Willamina, Amity, Dayton, etc., not just McMinnville. And I beseech you to do the right thing, and I encourage you to vote yes on this issue. We have seen in the warming shelters 2,608 people be sheltered this year alone, and 679 during the summer of 2022, for a total of 3,287 persons using those shelters. That should at least alert you to the fact that there is a great need, not only for warming and cooling shelters, but a great need for those who need help, assistance, that are out there in the cold. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Harkema.
Thank you.
Okay. So Commissioner Starrett, do you want to sort of kick us off here? I have some thoughts in how we structure the discussion, but if you want to start us off.
Yes, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm hoping that Stan Thomas from Oregon Emergency Management is there. He's from the state. He's supposed to be joining us by Zoom today.
Yes.
I believe that he is here, and our Yamhill County Emergency Manager, Sgt Brian Young. I've had a lot of questions as this does relate to, since a declaration of emergency declaration does have the component of the Office of Emergency Management, both at the state level and the county level. So I'm wondering if Sgt Young can join us to answer some questions, and then also if Mr. Thomas is available to join us. I know he said he'd be joining virtually, because I believe the foundation of this discussion is going to really hinge. I mean, there's no question about the fact that we have a need and we have a homelessness problem. But I think when we are asked to declare emergencies, we have to look at the gravity of that. I'm concerned about unintended consequences, and also what is the county's, this is sort of the base discussion of, before we move into what will the program do, what would the money fund, what will this, how is this the county implicated, and what are the liabilities, what are the expectations of what the county would do. So Mr. Thomas, thank you for joining us, and Sgt Young, thank you for joining us. And I just wanted to start out with a couple of questions related to the structure of a declaration, an emergency declaration that comes from the governor, and then one that is declared at the county level, and some of the ramifications of that at the county level, because it's not something you do lightly. So, Mr. Thomas, if you could answer a couple of questions about the sort of the hierarchy here. What's the food chain of an emergency declaration done at the county level, and then how what resources become available to the county through the state?
Thank you. And we are joined by Sgt Young, as well as Mr. Thomas and Mr. Reeves, it looks like. So Sgt Young, did you want to kick that off, or maybe Stan wants to?
I think the question was probably geared more towards
Towards Stan.
Director
Okay.
Thomas right now.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly, Chair and Commissioner Starrett, thank you. Glad to be here to try to answer questions and provide clarification. The Oregon Office of Emergency the Oregon Department of Emergency Management is involved due to the Governor Kotek's declaration, state of emergency for homelessness across the state. She has focused the efforts on 7 of the continuum of care regions throughout the state, and then the balance of continuum of care have an opportunity to add on if they so choose to do. The add-on does require that a county follow suit with a declaration, state of emergency on homelessness, and also an assessment of the challenges in the homeless population that's in place. I can provide that information now. I think it is in the declaration, but in order to do so, the governor is looking for an unsheltered population in 2022 that's greater than 30 households, that the community, the local jurisdiction, has declared a state of homelessness or a state of emergency related to homelessness. And then there's an increase of unsheltered homelessness, increase rate 50% between 2017 or 2022, or if in 2022 your unsheltered homeless population increased by 80%. The Executive Order 2302 is pretty narrow in scope. It is also a sister executive order, so to speak, with 23-3 and 23-4. Neither of those are emergency declarations, but it does focus all state agencies to refocus and determine if they can shift funds to help with the homeless crisis throughout the state. And 23-4 is related to increasing affordable housing and housing stock throughout the state. I can answer any questions. We are looking, it does require a state of emergency from the county. The reason we are looking for that state of emergency is that we understand that the county is committed to this, along with the cities. We understand that if one particular community within a county does something, it could impact the other communities throughout that county. So we are looking at a county level. And I think with that brief overview, I'll see if there's any questions.
Okay, so
Mr. Thomas, can you Chair, just a quick question to follow up, if I may. Basically, one of the things that has caught my eye, and I'm just wanting to get a little more information on this, is we have to certify that all local resources have been expended. And I'm wondering to what degree that means we have expended every possible resource within our county budget. I don't know if we can address that at the city level, but we would have to do a preliminary assessment of property damage, loss, injuries, or death. This might be something that Sergeant Young would address in terms of all local resources. Does that mean through Health and Human Services, through public safety, through what capacity are we to attest to the fact that all local resources have?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Sergeant Young. If you don't mind, I'll answer that from the perspective of the Governor Kotek's emergency declaration. And I think in this particular declaration, it is not it's not as clear as a wildfire or a flood or a snowstorm that I think many of us are experiencing right now. In that declaration, we would want to see the impacts of homelessness on the community, on the county, what is being done, and where the shortfalls are at. Where we talk in a declaration related to a fire, have you expanded or used all your resources? It's a little bit different. We want to know the impacts of homelessness on the community. So I'd be more than happy to share the governor's declaration. Because the other thing, if the governor does make a determination that a county is added onto this declaration, we are then asking for a community assessment. And we have contractors on board to help with that community assessment that's paid for by the state, which gets into those resources and whether or not they've been expended. It's looking at what is currently being done, what are the unmet needs. It really walks through a process. So I don't think in the initial declaration that you have to certify that every resource is that the capabilities don't exist anymore. But we do want to hear about that population increase, and those numbers is what we're going to base it on. Does that help?
It helps, but I want to make sure that if something is outlined as a requirement for a declaration of an emergency declaration, and it says that we must attest to that, and yet now maybe we don't need to attest to it. I just want to make sure when we sign on the dotted line, if we choose to do that, that we have not encumbered ourselves legally in a requirement that we just can't really say we have done that as a county.
Yeah, I understood. I think if I guess we can provide some technical assistance with that if the county decides that this is something they want to move forward on. The declaration is really from the county as a request for assistance to the state. It does go through Oregon Emergency Management. And in this particular case, we look at the declaration. We've assisted with other counties, and they have provided their draft declarations to us, and we can provide technical assistance to make sure that we can alleviate those concerns.
Thank you. And Sergeant Young, can you address how this will impact your?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Sterrett. I think I'll start with the last, I think one of the last concerns or topics was the expending of resources. And I certainly don't want to get out ahead of the state or Director Thomas in this, but in reviewing the 7 bullet points of the guidelines from the state regarding the type of declarations and information for elected officials, I don't see any specific language that talks about expending resources. And I think I bring that up because I could read off the bullet points as they're listed if you'd like. But I think in conversations that I've had with Director Thomas, this is really view at the state level. Again, I don't want to get out in front of them, but in a multi-agency coordination group effort rather, and viewed from the recovery view rather than an EOP view. When you think about the emergency operations plan, you're typically thinking, well, we're going to be in this response posture, and we've got incoming resources to mitigate this specific damage or incident that's happening. And in the mindset of a recovery view, I think the goal at the state is to look at this long-term and seek out solutions in a recovery frame rather than the emergency response frame. I hope that answers or helps on that front. I'll pause right there in case you want to address that before I get into the possible implications of impacts to emergency management.
No, thank you, Sergeant.
Okay, thank you. A little choppy. I apologize. A little choppy with your connection. There must be the snow. Slows everything down, I think. I don't know how to answer that question on the impacts of the local emergency management program, other than to say, I think going back to the view that Director Thomas and I, the discussions that Director Thomas and I have had regarding that multi-agency coordination group model, it's really probably best suited as emergency management be a supporting structure at the table with the subject matter experts that deal with the homeless population on a day-to-day basis. I mean, there's so many resources out there. And I, interestingly enough, I guess anecdotally, I had a conversation late last week with county council, and we came up with these series of questions. And I'd like to thank Heather Richards and Mayor Drabkin on answering those. Councilman Adam Garvin, that was very helpful. We had these questions that we developed, and we're really from a standpoint of, we don't know what's being done on a daily basis because it's not what he and I work with on a daily basis. The folks that deal with the homeless and their needs are better suited to answer really, how do we move forward? So again, I think the impacts from where I sit now are probably pretty limited to other than attending meetings, offering support, whatever that might look like. And it would be there to, I guess, give an emergency management perspective and be that pathway to the state. I may have missed something, but I think that encompasses where I sit now.
If I might
Yeah.
be able to add to that.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the reason ORS 401, which is our emergency declaration statutes, the reason that statute was invoked in that state of emergency was to allow the ability to waive certain rules, procurement authorities, those types of things at the state level. That is what brought Oregon Department of Emergency Management into this. I will be very clear, and I've been very clear throughout in our engagement with the governor. While we want to use the discipline of emergency management and the discipline of disaster recovery, we do not want to have this be a large impact on our county emergency managers. And in fact, the governor asked specifically, if we have a disaster, how is this going to impact our ability to respond to those disasters with emergency management being involved? Sgt Young is spot on. It is very much in a support role. What was recognized is the things emergency managers do very well is bring a community together very quickly to begin a disaster recovery or a disaster response operation and organize it in a manner to get a lot done in a short period of time, which is what we're looking at with Executive Order 2302. If it was something that Yamhill County chose to move forward with, while Sgt Young would be in a support role with us providing technical assistance to Sgt Young, the MAC group or multi-agency coordination group is a system that allows a little bit more flexibility than a response operation, as Sgt Young said. But we'd be looking for public housing authorities, local homeless agencies, rapid rehousing services, shelter developer operators, landowners, behavioral health providers. They would form that MAC group. We want the subject matter experts to be able to address the issues and identify those unmet needs. And I think I can attest for myself and probably for Sgt Young as well. We are not the experts. So we would assist the facilitation and the discipline of a MAC group so that subject matter experts could be subject matter experts.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. So Sergeant Young, for at least for me and perhaps for Commissioner Johnston, because Commissioner Sterrett was kind of the go-between here in tracking down information. A lot of this is very new to me and perhaps to you in terms of the numbers and the questions that have been asked. Can you maybe go through and describe the questions that you had and the back and forth that you've had with the city? And just at a high level, my understanding is that if we do this, this is a county-wide state of emergency. It is not specific to McMinnville. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so beyond what I just asked, what does that mean for our other cities? And what kind of information do we have to have available to say Amity is now in a state of emergency?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think going back to my conversation with County Council on Friday, we did discuss that for McMinnville only and what that would look like, and would that be the problem solver? And then in further discussions with Director Thomas, I understand more now about the countywide declaration, because just for the fact that it does allow because homelessness is not just McMinnville. I think there's other communities. I think there are other communities that have homeless populations within their geopolitical borders. So I think by having that countywide effort, it allows access to some of those funds or resources from the state, funds and resources that we might not have at the local or municipal or county level. And can we get that from the state? So there's some work behind the scenes, I think, on trying to expand parts of this to a statewide rather than just the ones that are listed. But I think that's beyond what we're talking about today. That's going through the legislative process, and who knows how long that's going to take. I would be happy to read off the questions that I read. I did forward these questions and answers to Commissioner Sterrett this morning, as she is my Commissioner Liaison for Emergency Management. I didn't want to step on any toes because I don't know all the rules and regulations and dealing with it. So I'm just dealing with her at this point. But if given approval, I'd be happy to forward those to you. I would be also happy to read through these if you'd like, if you want to take that time, or if you'd rather wait on that, and I can just say what the questions are.
I would appreciate knowing what the questions were, and just if you want to summarize the answers.
Okay.
Because I think that, at least from my perspective, today is about identifying what this actually means for us as a county, not necessarily city by city, but what are we obligating ourselves to?
Yeah, you bet. And please keep in mind that these are from the viewpoint, or I guess originated from the viewpoint from county council and emergency manager who do not work in this space, don't have all the answers on what is being done on a daily basis. So some of these might, I don't know, quite frankly, seem like, well, duh, to those who work in that area, but we just don't know. It wasn't to imply anything. It's just, we didn't know the answers. So we came up with this list to throw out. So one of the first question was the data supporting the requirements that the state is asking for. I can't read those requirements right off the top of my head, but one of them is over 30, as Director Thomas mentioned, in the county, over 30 homeless.
In 2022.
I believe so. They're talking about point of time stuff, and obviously the pandemic affected the ability for doing the point in time count. Again, that's what I'm being told. I don't have any insider knowledge on that because I don't participate in that function. 2022 wasn't done, but 2023 has recently been completed, and I think the numbers are being vetted by the state and may be released here soon. The data that was provided back to me was data that had been collected to or by YCAP, and it spans from 2017 all the way through 2022. And it talks about in that time span, an 80% increase. If I'm reading this correct, obviously the city of McMinnville or their representatives could answer probably that a little bit more accurately. But I think, and I don't know if that would be acceptable to the state or not. Yes,
So
sir.
the numbers that you just rattled out, is that specific to McMinnville?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
I don't know it countywide.
It's
Okay,
countywide.
because so I just went on the point in time count real quick, and very first page, 2017, 223 counted. And then in 2020, 243. So that's not a 50% increase, but it is over 30 homeless in Yamhill County. So I guess my biggest question as we're going through this is if it's going to be a combined number to get to the 50% increase with cities numbers included with Yamhill County's numbers, because the point in time that I'm looking at is specific to Yamhill County, period.
Happy to share this data with you, not advocating.
Okay. Cool.
Okay,
Let's get
let's,
through more, yeah.
yeah, let's go through questions and then we'll tackle that.
Again,
So-
disclaimer, I'm not the expert in this, so this is what's presented, and I'm sure the experts back there can answer more accurately, so thank you. The next question that I had, or that I had sent over is just envisioning what the county's role is, who's going to take lead. Again, we don't know what this looks like. Christian and I don't know, I'm sorry, county council and I don't know what this is going to look like. So who's expected to take the lead in this? What does an emergency declaration put us into? And the answer is really, if the county wants to take the lead, go for it. But we have folks in place that are willing to be that tip of the spear, if you will. Those non-governmental organizations and advocacy groups that deal with the homeless populations, and know the treatments and services that are offered, will probably be those coordinating pieces that are involved in the multi-agency coordination group. The management of projects and administrative tasks associated with this, where does that lie? I think that comes from the perspective of the grants that come as a result of a disaster declaration. We get reimbursed if it reaches the presidential declaration arena. We're 75% reimbursement rate. And those are considered projects, and there's certain parameters and requirements to follow to get those reimbursements. That takes time behind the scenes to do those administrative tasks. I don't know what's going to be required from the state as far as if there's any funding that comes in, and is that reporting. It sounds like that's probably a reporting mechanism that could be very easily handled through that multi-agency coordination group rather than emergency management involvement. This one, I asked if does the city have a recovery model in place? I think that was a little confusing in retrospect, looking at that. I think you could replace model with plan, because we don't know, county council and I don't know what the city of McMinnville is involved in detail in their response to the homeless. So really, we just wanted to know, is there a plan that you guys are already exercising or envision from this request for an emergency declaration? Are you planning to spin up a coordinating body within your government structure, or we just trying to read the tea leaves and see what's out there. So again, I'll forward these to you if. Okay, great, thank you. And you can see in depth on the answers, and they're very detailed. So I think I'm hardly doing them justice at all. So this is one of those ones that, please don't read into it or anything like that, but really, does the request for declaration just look at the funding path, or is it to get subject matter experts to the table, or is it both? I think that's something that needs to be asked, but probably answers itself. I think it would be, and I'll just read it because it's very short and succinct. Both would be great and very welcome. So that's a honest and upfront answer, and I appreciate that. The next question is, what from where you are now does the declaration allow to happen that isn't already being done? Is there anything beyond really the efforts that the city of McMinnville or advocacy groups in Compass Shenandoah Valley? Is there anything beyond that? And there's a long paragraph in here that I won't read about sheltering and the ability to have sheltering in various capacities from up into transitional housing, in various forms. One is single mothers with children and single seniors, I think is what it is. So you can read that and get the gist of what is being answered here. It was a very thought out and complete answer. The last part was, I hope this helps. And that was from Heather Richards. I hope this helps. And Mrs. Richards or Miss Richards, yes, it helps immensely. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Sergeant Young? I guess maybe Mr. Thomas, if you could answer, we all know how the push and pull goes with state budgeting and funds, and the governor made a certain pot of money available for this and named continuum of care counties as these state of emergency, quote unquote, counties. Now there's an opportunity for add-ons. And then we have a parallel effort to just make the entire state sort of an emergency. So what are we looking at in terms of funding? Has that been discussed? Is there a cap there?
The funding has been discussed. Oregon Housing and Community Services is the one that will maintain the funding. There is work going through the legislature with the governor's office. I think the dollar amount in her press release was $130 million. I don't think today I can answer how that money is going to be distributed. That is still in the works through the legislature. There was initial set of $40 million that Oregon Housing and Community Services had that was repurposed to get things moving. But I don't have a complete answer for you on the funding stream at this time.
Okay. And then you said that if there's a declaration that is passed, it then goes to your department for a community assessment. That's paid for by the state, I'm assuming out of similar funds, but what's the timeline on that?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Chair. I didn't mean to interrupt. The process, I'll clarify that process. Any declaration for any state of emergency is sent from the county to Oregon Department of Emergency Management, where we assess, and then we provide a recommendation to the governor on whether that declaration should be approved or not. The governor actually approves declarations from the county. Oregon Department of Emergency Management does not. In this particular case, when that declaration is received for homelessness, that information is provided to Oregon Housing and Community Services as the subject matter expert to verify the numbers and the documentation and what's there. Once that verification is done, it is sent to the governor. The community assessment is something that is done if the declaration is approved. And that's where we have, if the declaration is approved and a county is now part of this process, we would start by scheduling a meeting with my agency and Oregon Housing and Community Services to go over the technical assistance that would be available. And we have technical assistance both in OEM and OHCS, and what that community assessment looks like. And we would be asking, one, the county would form a multi-agency coordination group, and that group would do the community assessment, which in turn identifies helps identify for the county what resources are necessary to meet the objectives in 23-2.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Sterrett, did you have any follow-up questions?
A lot of this will pretty much hinge on our follow-up discussions that we would probably have at another time, which would include the city, because I have a lot of questions, and Sgt Young referred to those. I think it's premature to talk about those specifics now. But as far as the multi-agency coordination, I know that a lot of the partners have been involved in this discussion for years. I was part of one that we had a number of years ago with McMinnville. And so we've had sort of the partners at the table discussing the issue. And I just wanted to maybe put out there, how will this be different in terms of the discussions, the people at the table, the problems we've presented, and then it stays there? Is it all about a lack of funding? Is it all about who's going to handle this? There's just so many unknowns, because if it's just about funding, I know that might not be the answer, the total answer to what we do, because I'm looking at the governor's $130 million plan to end homelessness, and part of it includes $87 million for rental assistance for 8,000 people and $54 million to rehouse 1,200 people by paying their rent. So I just want to make sure that we're focusing on the populations that we are all in agreement on, are people who are completely homeless or are precariously housed, and all those definitions have sort of morphed throughout the years. So still a lot of questions to answer, but I'm getting a little more clarity on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnston, any questions?
None for Brian anymore.
Okay, thank you, Sgt Young. I think I would love to hear from the mayor, Mayor Drapkin, just to kind of get McMinnville's perspective as well.
Thanks, Brian.
Appreciate it.
No worries. Got it.
Welcome,
you.
Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank
So
you.
you've
Thank
been
you,
hearing our
commissioners.
conversation. So if you want to just kind of maybe pick up on some of the things you're hearing
Yeah,
and respond to.
absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for discussing this today. I want to start by clarifying the point in time count conversation. So the governor's executive order asked for point in time count data. Point in time counts are countywide. Ours has always been countywide. There are 12 sites throughout the county that, for a snapshot in time, one day, not even a full day, people go to certain locations to take to count essentially how many people are experiencing homelessness. We actually advocated to start getting city-specific data in 2020 or 2019, I can't remember exactly. And that was supposed to roll out the year that we were told the point in time count wouldn't be happening. And that was not a decision that the county made or the city made or that YCAP made. That decision came from the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care, who suspended our point in time count in 2 years for what I understand to be funding reasons. So when this executive order came out and there was a request for this data, we literally had already been excluded from the resources to capture the data in order to provide it to see if we qualified. Those of us that work in housing, we have no doubt that we qualify. We can show this through many other data points. We just can't today show it through the point in time count data because we literally haven't had the ability to do that specific piece of research. 2023 point in time count did happen. Again, it's countywide numbers, and those numbers are at the state, but they will not be released until they're certified. So we will see that in a number of months. I believe, and I'm sure there are others in the room that correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that information usually comes out in June. So, you know, I firmly believe that that point in time count data will support all of the other data that we have. According to our last point in time count, if you're looking at just the 30 households experiencing homelessness versus showing the increase, which is the area where we're having trouble supplying that piece of data according to the point in time count. We had over 30 households just in our youth population, just in people that were under the age of 18 in the 2020 point in time count. We had almost 30 households just in our houseless veteran population. I believe it was 23 houseless vets in 2020. And with our chronically homeless, and chronically homeless is a person that's been experiencing houselessness for over a year. Within our chronically homeless population, we far exceed that 30 household count. The information that we've asked to be able to supply, the data that we've asked to be able to supply in lieu of the point in time count data, since it doesn't exist for the years requested, is the coordinated entry data. And so this isn't necessarily holistic either, right? It's not as though it's a census. It's difficult to always know an exact number. It's a snapshot of what's going on. But through our coordinated points of entry, we saw an increase from 2017. We had 204 people come through. In 2021, we had 1,021 people come through. So far exceeding the 50% increase. So that point in time count clarity was the first thing I really wanted to address because this is so rooted in data. To me, it's a very data driven decision and request, or in part. So I wanted to touch on that.
While we're on that subject, so what is the state willing to accept data from? Is it just the point in time count, or are they willing to accept numbers from Encompass Yamhill Valley, or?
So we've asked.
What are the options?
Yeah, so we've asked this question a lot, and we've raised this issue with a number of offices above ours, and said this, we're kind of stuck in this position. We weren't given the money to do the research, and now we need this research. We've asked if we could provide other numbers. The response we received was, if you declare a state of emergency, then we can go forward. And basically, my understanding, and really I should defer to Director Thomas, but my understanding is that it's now your decision on data. You won't have the point in time count data, at least not until later in the year. So is this acceptable enough data for you to allow for the next step to happen, which would be the community assessment? And Director Thomas, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think understanding with the COVID impacts and the pit counts not taking place, we look at 30 or more households. But then one of the following: unsheltered homelessness increased by 50% between 2017 to 2022, or the rate of unsheltered homelessness in 2022 was 80% or greater. So that there was an 80% increase. Those are the two criteria that we are looking at. Go ahead.
30 individuals is not very many individuals for an entire county. So is that more specific?
Good question. 30 households is an individual or family in an emergency shelter. And a family is defined as a group of individuals that care for each other.
Okay, but the measurement is countywide. That's the expectation.
Yes.
I'm assuming that even though the parameters say 2017 to 2022, if we only have 2017 through 2023, that would be acceptable.
Yes, and as far as acceptable, what we look for with that declaration, as the mayor stated, that information being provided with in the declaration being evaluated with Oregon Housing and Community Services with the county.
Okay. Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. There was another topic point that came up in your discussion, which was how would this, I believe it was your question, Commissioner Starrett, of kind of how would this impact? Is this only an influx of money? And if so, how will that make an impact? Well, it's not only an influx of money, although the money is important. We do know that there are a lot of shelter bed projects that we're out advocating for dollars for regularly, that they're not necessarily city run. They're projects that are ready to go, that are specific to different populations, and their timeframe and ability to provide those shelter beds is limited by funding. So we do have one set of projects where an immediate inflow of cash would literally change the rate at which that those shelter beds would become available. The other major areas of support, though, are the technical support from the state that was mentioned, and the coordination efforts. As Commissioner Starrett mentioned, we do, I think we do a good job in our county at working between the many partner organizations. Certainly at our McMinnville Affordable Housing Commission, we have regular agency updates. And so we know that all of those agencies that are in there are hearing what each other are working on, understanding limitations. We try to be good supportive partners from one another in a variety of ways. So and we know that there's more that can be done because each agency only has its specific capacity, and those capacity issues hit each agency in different ways, right? They can be hiring or getting qualified people in the field. That's, as we know, across many industries is a limiting factor right now, or it's just their own budgets and ability to put services out. So I think to the question of what do we get if you declare the state of emergency, is we get that technical support. We get more coordination through these multi-agency groups. And we additionally get dollars that we have projects that we can immediately fund to bring more shelter beds. There was one other point that I wanted to add some clarity to, and I'm losing it at the moment in my notes. Do you have any questions right now?
I was just gonna say on the funding part, so I just got Sgt Young's email forwarded, so I was looking through some of them, but it looks like the city is looking for dollars for shelter specifically. So whether it's shelter beds or it's something larger. Are there specific things that you have in mind in terms of going after in terms of the dollar ask?
Sure.
Okay.
So as I'm sure you're aware, YCAP has been working on a navigation center called Any Door Place. That the money for that initially came through Representative Ron Noble through the House legislature. At the time, it looked as though it would cost about $1.5 million to build that navigation center. Well, the construction market, as we're aware, has changed, and that will no longer facilitate the construction of that. That project is being worked on collaboratively between YCAP and the city of McMinnville. So we're doing parts of it that we know how to do really well, which is construction and talking with developers, et cetera. And so we're managing that end so that YCAP can focus on their area of expertise, which is the service delivery. So as an example, getting that funding could complete the navigation center, which at this point, we don't have a completion date because we can't sign construction documents if we don't have enough money to pay for the construction. So that's one specific area. And a navigation center, Any Door Place, it's a wraparound services. So it's a place where if somebody's experiencing homelessness, they go. There is a level of emergency shelter, but it has a greater cause, which is to really connect to services. So our intent, our goal at the city is really to function. I've always really liked Habitat for Humanity's slogan of it's a hand up, not a handout. And what we know about those who are experiencing homelessness is that there's a need for support in a variety of ways. And so providing a space like a navigation center, it allows somebody to go in and then have contact with the service providers that they need to have service providers, so that they're not kind of caught in this system of, well, now you need to walk to the DMV and, to get your license in order to get this next step. You're not limited from getting your housing application in based on, where you have to go and all of the things that you're trying to manage with very limited resources. So that's one project. The Gospel Rescue Mission has a 10-bed men's transitional shelter that they would like to construct. So they could be a recipient of those funds as well. You've already heard from Encompass Yamhill Valley, who has goals of creating and expanding their peer-to-peer support network. And we also have Operation Generation, which is associated with Praise Assembly, although they're launching a nonprofit for this project as well. And that's a 23 unit community. Each unit is 1 to 3 bedrooms, and it's multi-generational living. They partner senior single women with single young mothers. It's close to downtown, it's close to services, it's walkable to grocery, all of those things. So there are a spectrum of projects that are literally ready to go that need funding to get off the ground. And between those projects that I mentioned, we believe we could add about 100 shelter beds in the time it would take to construct.
Okay. Have you heard of any timeline on the funding, spending the funding?
The emergency funding or other funding that we've received for these projects?
Emergency funding, is there?
I don't know the timelines,
Okay.
and I don't remember seeing one. I defer to Director Thomas.
Yeah, if I might, part of this work is trying to identify some of those projects that are ready to go. The funding at this point in time needs to be spent by the time the executive order expires, which is January 10th, 2024.
January.
It's a
10th.
1-year declaration of emergency.
Oh, wow, that's pretty quick.
It is very quick, but that's also something else that I wanted to highlight, is that it's not a request to declare a state of emergency in perpetuity. It is a request to declare a state of emergency to give us this tremendous lift to try to make an impact and turn things. They're upside down right now.
And there is projects that are shovel ready to go or
Yes.
close to it.
Yeah, we have, we actually have at McMinnville, we have a hashtag we call Shovel Ready Mac, so that when we are talking about projects that are in need of funding, whether or not they're related to homelessness, we refer to those host of projects that are ready to go, but for the funding as Shovel Ready Mac. And we have multiple shovel ready projects.
Have you been talking to any other mayors in the county about potentially their role?
Well, I haven't talked to other mayors about it, and I will tell you why. The direction we got from the state was to come and ask you to declare a state of emergency. And I felt it was important to take that step and do that in the order that I was directed to do it. I was at the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments dinner the other night and talked to their city manager after having been at a recent roundtable, and asked, I said, if I told her that I had requested from the governor the allowance into the executive order, and that I had gotten direction and had sent you a letter requesting this discussion, which again, I'm very grateful for. And I said, do you think you have the data, or do you think you can show these similar problems? And they were like, yes. And our big problem, they talked more specifically about what their problems were. Sheridan's problems are not McMinnville's same problems, but these are problems that are persistent throughout the county. also at the city, the other reason I haven't gone and talked to all the other mayors is because while we are happy to stand in support with all the other cities of the county, we're not trying to say, just give all this resource to McMinnville. You know, we want what's best for the county. We also I didn't want to kind of put them in a position of now you need to hustle and supply this data and do all this work. I just, you know, one thing that I really value about governance is that we have process, and I was given specific direction on that process. And so I'm happy to be here and be in that process. That said, I would be happy to reach out to other mayors and talk about their needs, how they see that this would be applying to them. I would take on that task without hesitation.
Yeah, I was just curious, but it sounds like the data is specific to the county anyway, so it's not something that they necessarily have to jump to. So, questions, concerns?
No, just I guess statement, and maybe Mary can follow up with it, but it seems to me that it's just, we need to sign off on an emergency declaration, and then it goes to the next level of the state saying, verifying, no matter where our numbers come from, and then they will either accept or deny that, to where the liability doesn't seem to be on us, but maybe Mary knows more to that.
Well, I don't. That was really why I wanted Director Thomas and Sgt Young and even County Council, who's had a look at some of these questions that I've brought, which is really before we do this, there are implications that we might not be aware of. And I'm not saying the need isn't there. I'm saying that on the legal end of this, an emergency declaration has some specific requirements and parameters, and that's what I wanted to vet today. You know, not the you know, the quality of proposals, because we all know that there are a lot of wishes out there, and we just don't have the money to do it all. But I also want to make sure that we're not just saying, okay, if we go ahead and do this, we will now have access to more money. But again, reporting requirements, is that going to land on administration? Is that going to land on emergency management? YCAP says that apparently that they'll step up. We know that they've got staffing issues. I want to be realistic about what it is we're doing, and in passing this declaration doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get people that are committing crimes on 3rd Street, or people living in parks, or any of the problematic, challenging issues that sometimes are really not about finding a place to live, but finding whether or not people even want to accept that kind of help. We've just seen it over and over again, and that the problem is not just here's a place to live and here's some supports. It sometimes doesn't work. I just want to make sure we're really cautious about what we're doing before.
So is it your understanding that because the funds come in the form of a grant, I'm assuming they come to the county, so we would have to manage that since we are the.
I haven't done that level of analysis to even answer that.
Okay.
You know, so how the funds are distributed or made available to the jurisdictions that fall under the emergency declaration, I don't know if we've gotten to that detail that it's going to be released to the county and the county's going to facilitate, or so I don't know.
Okay.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Sure.
And then I think Director Thomas could probably speak to that more thoroughly. But in terms of the reporting requirements, yes, we did talk to YCAP about it. And YCAP has those types of systems in place. They're internalized. So it's not just staffing. They have the software systems to produce. It's something they have to do all the time for the various fundings that they receive. So they didn't feel like there was an administrative burden in providing that. And then they have also said that they would act if the state would allow this, and I don't know this answer, they would be happy to be the direct recipient so that there is not an additional burden put on the county. And honestly, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I believe at the city of McMinnville, we would also be happy to be a direct recipient and then administer those funds and take on the accounting that goes along with that. We're already advocating for monies for these projects in other areas. And so we're happy to, we are mentally and system-wide preparing ourselves for hopefully the opportunity to pass through funds to these organizations to do the work that they do. And then I also do have, and if you don't have, I would be happy to share with you the OEM. Oh no, we have already shared it with you, the OEM declaration guide, but there are the 7 bullet points that were mentioned earlier. There's one on page 15 and then the rest on page 16. And so as I kind of read through those, I feel like a lot of these, are answers to these questions. They are both city and county, areas impacted, for instance, the first bullet point, areas of impact. There are countywide implications from those based on the high rate of houselessness that we see.
Mr. Thomas, I don't know if you can speak to that, Director, in terms of who would manage the money.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't. The grant will actually be managed by Oregon Housing and Community Services. But as that takes shape, I'd be more than happy to get you in contact with an OHCS representative, but they'll be managing the grant.
So, okay. So here's my, I'm looking into the future if we do this. Let's say the governor approves a state of emergency for housing in Yamhill County. We have mayors or city councilors come forward from different cities saying we have, X number of projects that need to be funded to the tune of, I don't know, $100 million or whatever. And you said OHCS?
Oregon Housing and Community Services.
OHCS manages the grant funding. So, and there's only $50 million that's available. So now we're in a position of who gets what and where and what role does the county play in that?
Yeah, I can't speak to the exact numbers related to funding, but what I can speak to is that is the purpose of the multi-agency coordination group. We would not be receiving requests from cities or counties or other elected officials. The formation of the MAC group with those partners that have boots on the ground that are the subject matter experts perform that community assessment, and that helps identify the needs and prioritize future capabilities that might need funding. So Oregon Emergency Management and Oregon Housing and Community Services will be receiving that information, and the governor's office will be receiving that information by the leadership of the multi-agency coordination group.
Okay, and sorry, is that group, does that group already exist statewide, or is it specific to Yamhill County?
It would be specific to Yamhill County. If the declaration is accepted by the governor, we would bring those communities together, or those organizations together, and we would be asking the county or the community to establish a MAC group for the county in this particular case.
Thank you.
May I, thank you. I just wanted to add that most of the agencies that we work with, they are countywide service providers currently. Even those that are centered in McMinnville, like for instance, Henderson House, they're the only domestic violence shelter in the county. So their service area is Yamhill County, even though they don't have offices outside of or housing outside of McMinnville. And it so happens that domestic violence happens to be one of the largest contributing factors to homelessness in our area. Again, I just want to offer that McMinnville would be happy to act as a coordinator to take any work off the county's plate. There is a lot of redundancy with work we already do. So yesterday in our housing meeting, we had this very conversation that I feel you may be hinting at about how to kind of divvy up dollars as they come in when you have many agencies all with good work that needs to be accomplished. And based on just a yesterday conversation with the leads of 5 or 6 different service providers in the county, the conversation went towards the highest impact we can make is the direction that we will go. That these agencies are already working together. We have the shared goal that we all really have, which is to decrease the number of people that are experiencing homelessness in our area. And so I believe that burden of making a decision, I don't feel that's something that would fall on the county, because I with my whole heart believe that these agencies will evaluate what can be done right away and where the highest impact will be. And they already work together constantly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate the information. Like I said, a lot of this is very new to us in terms of this discussion. It's a little hard to come up with some follow-up questions on the fly as we're sitting here. So I just want to make sure I can take some time to make sure I have all my questions answered. I'm sure Commissioner Johnston and Commissioner Sterrett, you feel the same way. But this has been very helpful in looking at this possibility. So I really appreciate you being here to answer questions, Mayor.
We're very happy to. I'm happy to be here every week until you feel resolved towards making a decision, and to continue to provide any information or assistance that we can, and including the staff at the City of McMinnville. We're very dedicated to making a major impact in these problems. And I do want to just add one more piece of information that relates to what's happening in the legislature right now. There was some discussion about the amendments to House Bill 2001 and declaring a state of emergency for the entire state.
Right.
From our perspective at the City of McMinnville, it would still be important for this declaration, this emergency declaration for Yamhill County, because House Bill 2001, if these amendments go through, they will still prioritize the cities with a declared state of emergency. So the monies that they will release will, 50% of the monies that they would release would go to the counties with declared states of emergency. And then the other 50% would go to all of the other counties in the state. So there are layers of beneficial impact for our county in terms of what we could do with these resources. And thank you again so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, Sgt Young, for being here. And
Mayor.
Director Thomas as well. And
May I add one last point?
Sure.
Time is a bit of the essence for the continuum of care regions that are working on this and developing their MAC groups. They are asked to have their community assessment plan completed by March 10th with a review by OEM and OHCS between March 10th and March 17th. So there is a timeline and a lot of work that has to be done in a very short period of time. So just want to let you know the timelines that we're looking at the state level.
Okay, that's rather quick.
Yes.
So if you back that up in terms of the steps that need to happen, I mean, what we're talking about next week, a decision has to be made. Next week is March 2nd.
I would say the sooner the better.
Okay, Commissioner Sterrett, did you have a question? You unmuted.
Yes, Chair, I'm wondering, I'm looking at the workload that our county council has, that our administrator has, and the timeline that we're looking at here. And I want to make sure that we're realistic about what we could be dumping on them to come up with something that, and even our emergency manager. So what I'm wondering is if we could ask the City of McMinnville, the mayor, to put together a proposal which would answer some of the questions that we had today, so that we basically had a template of how we would address this and how we could basically go forward without any of the because we really still have some unanswered questions. So I'm wondering if we could ask them, we had some questions about who would be the administrator, how the funds would be allocated, those types of things, so that we're not just going, okay, we sign it and then now what? Maybe a little bit more front load some of those questions in the form of a proposal so that we would be ready to.
Well, I think that, the sticking point for me is this declaration that has to include the data. We don't have the data for 2023. We won't until maybe June. So what is the supporting piece in there that we can, as you said earlier, that we can sign off on and feel good about and feel comfortable saying this is where we're at. Now I'm hearing that all has to be put together and packaged up by next week.
Put together, but they're going to verify it all. So we're just going to make a statement that, yes, we're declaring emergency based on there's over 30 homeless. We've increased from 2017, 50%, which we're not 100% sure on what we can use for numbers for that, but the state will eventually say, yes, we agree with your numbers, or no, we don't, ultimately in the end, to approve our emergency.
Right, but typically county council would put something like that together. And I think what Commissioner Starrett's asking is, could we potentially have some help from the city to help us draft the meat for that statement?
If I could, I might just say one thing real quick. I believe I heard Director Thomas say that they are and have been working with some other counties. So if possible, we might be able to take a look at what some of those other draft declarations look like. And that could be very helpful in sort of streamlining our side as well.
Director Thomas, is that something that
More than happy to do everything we can to help support. We can provide some technical assistance there.
And yes, I think at the city of McMinnville, especially if we could work with Sgt Young, we want to make sure that we would be hitting on your, making sure that we're answering thoroughly. And always, of course, happy to build on the work that others have done with no need for redundancy or wasted efforts.
okay? Well, sorry, Commissioner.
Just one more thing, Chair. And then also if we could take into account that while we do have a lot of cooperation among the various partners that are working on this issue, I'd like to make sure that the West Valley and the jurisdictions that have significant problems that maybe don't come to our attention as much, that we are really focusing on them as well, that they're part of the.
Yeah, I agree. Aside from the technical pieces of putting together the declaration, I think that we will be interested in having some, not oversight, but input into who sits on the MAC group agency.
Would you want would you, just for clarity, are you saying you would want final approval of who sits on the multi-agency group? Which is fine. I just so I know.
I don't know that I'm ready to say that yet. And obviously my colleagues would have to weigh in. It just feels like if the flow of all of this is going through the MAC group, not necessarily to the county, we really are sort of not involved at that point,
We can put together a list of agencies that we believe would be appropriate because they do have the expertise and because they do have the capacity and because they do have a variety of service areas, and to make sure that we hit on those points and we can provide a longer list of recommendations essentially.
Okay. Okay, well, it sounds like we've got some things to look at and some work to do to follow up on this issue. So appreciate everyone's time and discussion.
I have a couple more questions,
Oh, sure.
just very small, short and sweet for Howie. When he initially was given the numbers out, there's 3,287 using shelters. Is that 3,287 people, or is it visits? Visits. So do you know what the correlation is or what it comes down to, the 3,287, what it is for people?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I can tell you that the Yamhill County Gospel Rescue Mission and the emergency shelter portion does about 50 to 100 beds, overnight beds. I can tell you that the capacity at the Newburgh Emergency Shelter was dropped from 30 down to 14 by the city, stating that they have to, due to occupancy and size, go down 14 total. I can tell you that the largest contingent is at First Baptist Church, and we have seen anywhere on any given shelter day or night, anywhere from 32 to 48 people staying at those shelters.
The numbers that you gave and the number or just stats that are on this card, is this just the Encompass Yamhill Valley, or does this include everybody? So, Mission, and any other programs, YCAP numbers? Well, just in general, so you rattle off 3,287. Is that just what Encompass Yamhill Valley's tracking, or does it track the numbers from?
Tracking, and it doesn't include 3 libraries, Sheridan, McMinnville, and Newburgh. It doesn't include day centers such as Second Street Drop-In Center in Newburgh. These are just numbers of people that go to the shelters.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Starrett, could you hear Howie? Okay.
Can I clarify one other thing?
Yeah,
Yes.
I might have you come up though to the microphone. I just want to make sure you're.
So I've been involved in the YCAP point in time count since 2009 when it began. The first year that we counted, we went out to every wild area. We went to every church. We went to the prisons. We went to all of the locations, and we only found 464 in 2009 total homelessness. In 2020, which was the last point in time count before COVID, that was true. 1,428 people were found to be homelessness in Yamhill County. That number hasn't gone down due to wildfires, ice storms, the economy as it wrecked from COVID. The numbers have increased. So I'm worried about the point in time count for 2023 being really skewed because they only used 3 places to go to instead of going out into the real world.
So the 2020 count,
Yes, was the last.
do you feel that that is an accurate number, or do you think it should be more?
I think it is actually more now than there were then, but I don't know how accurate the 2023 count is going to be. Having said that, 2021, 2022 didn't happen. There was no point in time count due to COVID.
Right.
In 2020, was there the same issue with the 3 touch points?
No, we went everywhere.
Okay.
Every location that we knew, plus all the camps, all of it.
So from 2017 to 2023, are you saying that 2020 would probably be the best
The most
number?
accurate count, absolutely. And I believe that was 1,428.
Which I guess I would, to put a fine point on, I would just say that we meet the criteria without needing all of the years to meet the criteria. We met the data in advance.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Starrett, any follow-up questions? No? Okay. Thank you very
Mayor.
much.
Thank you, Howie.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Howie. Thank you, Ms. Director Thomas, Sgt Young.
Thank you. Take care. I'm available anytime.
Thank you. Okay, so we will follow up on those items and commissioners, why don't we take a Sorry.
If I may, before we move on, just so I ensure that staff has clear direction on what the board is expecting to see next week, do you want emergency management, county council and our team to put together a draft to bring forward for next week for consideration or discussion, or just kind of looking for some direction so so our teams know what we should be working on between now and next Thursday?
Sounds like, considering the time constraint, that something has to move forward.
Yes, I would like to
Uh,
draft. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just concerned that we're doing exactly what I was worried about, and that is that we're basically putting this on to the administration staff and to county council staff to put together something that might take more time than they have to do. So if, again, as the mayor mentioned, they'd be happy to work with us to get some of these questions answered. I just don't want to dump another project. I know there's it's time sensitive, but I think we have to be realistic of our staff to do.
Well, we'll work with the city and we can do this. If the board wants to consider a draft, we can. I don't really see that as overly burdensome at this point. I think we could do that in working with the city and with the data and a lot of the information that's already been pulled. And I know Brian's already been working on it as well. So we can at least have a draft for the board to review and consider, and any questions that come up between now and then.
And get other drafts from other counties that might help
Yeah,
write that draft.
correct.
Okay.
We can do it.
Yes, and then there may be some follow-up questions, not necessarily related to the draft, but. Okay, sounds good. Let's go ahead. Before we move on, let's take maybe a 5-minute break and we will come back around, well, let's just say 12:05. Thank you. Okay, we are back in formal session. I think the clock was off, but I believe the current time is 11:45. And we will pick up at let's see, we were on J2, but I'm actually gonna pull J4 forward so that Director Lago can be here and then take off to do what he needs to do. So item J4 is consideration of approval of a direct appointment of a professional service contract between Yamhill County and McGee Engineering, Inc. for consulting engineering services of the superstructure replacement of Pike Road Bridge over Turner Creek in the amount of $45,000, effective upon approval through October 1st of 2024. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Johnston moves approval and looks like this is a need to replace the bridge, not necessarily the concrete, the abutments, but the bridge itself. And deal with the load restriction that is on it. Okay. Okay, questions, concerns?
None.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. And then Mark, are you here for 5 as well? Okay. And then so we'll move to item J5, consideration of approval of revised bylaws for the Road Improvement Advisory Committee, RIAC, Board Order 15-167. And these are just basically some cleaned up bylaws that they put forward. I will move approval of item J5. Is there further discussion?
None.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so let's go back up to item J2, consideration of opening sealed bids for tax lot R4414-03591, county-owned tax foreclosed real property. And Jody, I know you sent an email.
I did. So this property is property that was available. I think it was up on our website there for private sale. It is less than $15,000. So I actually asked Noelle, our legal assistant, to reach out to property owners. I don't know if we can, do you have the fact sheet right now, or can we put it up on the screen? Let everybody understands what I'm talking about before I open this.
There wasn't anything in the packet.
Okay.
I sent it. Is it the email? I don't know if this is the same property, however.
So I don't think we've talked about this one. Maybe we have. It's a small, it's almost like a peninsula on the tip end of what looks like it's either farmland or forest land. I can't tell.
Zero 3591. And yeah, it looks like the map is the one you just sent. So the address is Riverside, is that right?
Doesn't really have an address. There's no access except
Okay.
by river.
So this one is, if you go down St. Joseph Road by OBS, this is back in there.
Mm.
There's actually another one on the other side of the river, I think that's kind of part of this also, but they are separated by the river.
Mm.
That would be accessed from Vanson's Dairy, which is in behind the Aviation Museum. So you go in behind there.
Yes.
If you can scroll down to the map. Not that one, the one below it, the aerial view. The other aerial view. There you go. So, okay, so this is the property that we received a sealed bid for. Noelle sent out notice to, I think, the property owner just to the north of it. I believe, a couple weeks ago. So we're hoping that's who this is from. So with that, shall I?
What's the minimum?
done.
What's that?
What's the minimum bid? It was 306, right?
Yeah, it was very low.
Okay.
It should be, can you go up 2 slides?
Yeah.
$306.
Okay.
Well, that's the real market value. There's no minimum bid.
There's no minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
White Johnson Life Estate is the bordering.
Say that again.
Dwight Johnson Life Estate is the bordering property.
So this bid is from a Jacob Stuck. He's out of McMinnville. And he bid $220. I don't know if there's any relation to that. That it sounds like a trust possibly.
And we're sure that it's for this property.
Yes.
Was marked.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
It's for this one. So it's up to the board if they want to accept that. They certainly can, or we can reject it if we have a reason.
There's literally no other way to get to this unless you go through the trustee's property or you float down the Yam Hill.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe he wants to float there.
Could be.
I guess I would be interested in asking him how he expects to gain access to it, because I'm just worried we might be setting somebody up for some conflict if we do this, and there's no relation, right? I don't know.
I don't
But
know. It
then why
doesn't.
would you put it out to open bid? I mean,
yeah.
then you just would have gave it to, you just would have sent one notice to the bordering property and it kind of defeats the purpose of sealed bids and all the other stuff. So,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just worried about
yeah, I have the
Access.
same concern for sure.
if I was the landowner directly above it, I would be kind of upset to
I
know
would
that
be too.
someone has to go through my property now to get to their corner. So
What we can do is, because I unfortunately don't know who Noelle sent notice to, and she is not here. So unless she's on the call, is she on Zoom?
What's the address on the envelope?
McMinnville. Oh, on the envelope?
Yeah. Return
It's the
address.
same, 1016 Southeast Millraid Avenue. Noelle, are you there?
What was the name again?
Jacob Stuck. Noelle, can you hear us? Okay, so what I can do is I can go ask Noelle and come back next week, and if we have not reached out to the northern property owners yet, which we should have, but we can let you know. We can also reach out to Jacob, make sure he understands that there's no access, no known access besides river. And then we can just come back to the board with more information. I think that's about the best we could do.
yeah, I mean,
My microphone wasn't on. Just wanted to highlight that we do have Yamhill County makes no representation about the value zoning suitability of any purpose, you know.
Yeah. No, yeah, I understand that. I just, if he wants to float down the river and park his boat and go fishing on his little third of an acre, that's great. I'm not saying no. I'm just curious if that was part of the consideration, or maybe he doesn't know.
So Noelle just sent me a message and said that, Johnson Dwight Life Estate, is that the one you found? I just want to see if she sent notice. Bear with me.
Feel like we need some elevator music or something. Who's the singer in the room?
She said she believes she sent them notice. She's looking for the scanned copy now. So we can come back and follow up.
Yeah, so we'll just hold it essentially.
Sure, we can just postpone acceptance or rejection until we come back with more info.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is next on the agenda, but we do have 2 more sealed bids.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if they were different.
That's a big question mark because they didn't write the tax lot number on the outside, so we're not sure what they're for. So we'll find out.
Okay. Okay, so we will postpone item J2 to next week when we have some more information. Item J3 is consideration of opening sealed bids for county-owned tax foreclosed real property.
Okay, so I'm going to open the first one. Both bids are from the same person. So for whatever that's worth, we did receive them the same day as well. Okay, so I'm going to open the first one here. So this is a bid from Skyline Real Estate Services out of California. It's a bid on tax lot number R319 AB 04400. And it's for $192. I'm going to have to look this up. To see which property that is real quick. I'm going to go ahead and open the second one so you guys can look at the forms while I'm looking these up. This is from the same company, Skyline Real Estate Services out of California. And this property is for this property, or this bid is for the same property that we just had a bid on. So this is for that little tiny peninsula-like chunk of land right on the river, and it's for $310. Okay, so let me do some research now, see which one this is.
Is there a name associated with those? That company?
No name given. There's a name on the return address of Hannelore Inman out of Coronado, California.
Well, I guess my same concern would apply then.
Yes, I would just be assuming, but I think that would be Munger Brothers Farms that he's right next to that, and they're not. That would be my only association connection. That
They farm, which,
there's Savarand, so they farm behind the museum. And you cross the river, you get to that other little piece that you would access from OBS area. And Munger Brothers owns that blueberry field that Evergreen used to have that borders the Yam Hill, which is, so Savarin would have the access to the other little piece, if that's what this one is.
Mhm.
And then if you go kind of due north, that's across the river, that's where the other little chunk is on the OBS side.
Hmm.
That would actually make the most sense if,
How are they gonna get their farm equipment there?
well, they're not.
Right.
Okay, I just sent you another worksheet on this. So this is for property that was on our website. It is a small triangle located in Newburgh.
It looks like
Hold on.
Mr. Stuck is joining us as well.
Okay. Do you want to finish this one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm waiting for Ken to pull up the worksheet so everyone knows what this property is.
So 0.02 acres. Minimum bid 190.
Do you want to scroll down? Show the aerial. So this is a small triangle. Thank you, sir. Located next to the railroad. We were going to, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. It's gone to auction. Nobody wanted it. We were gonna reach out to the city of Newburgh to find out because it lands right at the end of that road right there, see if they wanted it, but.
You're saying they farm?
Nope, this is not the one I was
Not
thinking
the
of.
one you're thinking.
Nope. I have no idea.
Mhm. Is that a street, that gray line?
Yes, yeah. I don't think that's the correct assessor's map, so let's
Yeah.
skip that one. I think that's property across the street.
It almost looks like a right of way.
It's the property down in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, the 4400. There are two little triangles on either side of the railroad tracks that the county's owned. I think the one you're talking about is 4400. This map is for 3990 maybe? Yeah, 04400. So it's on the other side of the tracks.
This one's kind of by Dairy Queen.
A little bit closer, yeah.
Okay. I
I-
don't have an opinion really.
Yeah, I don't.
I guess it's just a decision. Do you want to accept the bid or reject it?
What was the bid? 190?
Sorry, the bid was for 192. And I think the real mark or the minimum bid amount per, because it went to auction, that's the minimum that we can sell it for.
Okay. I would be in favor of
I'm in favor.
selling it. Commissioner Starrett?
Yes.
Okay, so is that a motion or? Okay.
Yep, just a motion to accept.
So I move to accept the bid of $192 for tax lot.
R3219 AB 0440. 0.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you.
So I'll come back with a deed in the next week or two.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good. And then if we,
You want to bring that other agenda item back so that Jacob can talk?
sure. So, we had postponed item J2 to next week, but we do have one of the bidders online. So I will open that discussion back up. And then Mr. Stuck, if we could have you. Or we will let you on here.
Hello, board. How's everyone doing?
Good, how are you? Welcome.
Good, thank you. Just wanted to throw out that I do understand the rights of access to that property. I do not plan on going through the property to the north, through his land to get there. I was thinking the same thing that you were saying, as in floating down the river, and more, it was just a project to see how the foreclosed property taxes worked in Yamhill County. So.
Okay, great. Well, we appreciate you answering that question.
Yeah, and I would also like to point out real quick that this was the same property that received that $35 bid a couple of weeks ago. Since this wasn't a property that had a minimum bid, I wasn't aware that you needed to bid a certain amount, and based on the relativity of the last property selling at, well, it's like 0.07% if you divide versus real market value. The bid that I submitted for this property at 306, it's actually higher than the one UJ has just approved. So just to throw that out there for the future, so I ended up spending probably way more than it's worth or ever will be worth. So.
Just so I'm clear, Mr. Stuck's bid was 200 something.
220, and a couple weeks ago it was $35, and that was rejected by the county for reasons unknown.
We did reject a $35 bid.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
correct.
true.
And then we did receive another sealed bid today for this property. So I just wanted to.
Yes. Yeah, I guess I was curious why the bid was rejected. It said it was too low, but if you look at the relative price to real market value, with the last property that just sold is about 0.07% versus a 0.11% or 11% that the $35 bid would have come out to. So just for you guys are aware.
Thank you for that, Jacob. I believe that the real market value is usually set by the tax and assessment. So if the bid was rejected, it was because this property went to auction, and the number at auction for the minimum bid is set based on that tax assessed value. And so then by law, we're only allowed to, once it goes to auction and fails, we're only allowed by law to essentially sell it for nothing less than 15% of what we set it at auction. So I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. But that's the process for this.
Okay, gotcha. Is there any way to get those numbers for what you set them at auction previously?
Yes.
Okay, it's just out of curiosity. It's not a big deal. And I'm more than happy to pay the 220 for the property. I'm still interested in it. So.
Okay. All right. Yes, feel free to reach out to our office and we can talk to you offline.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Stuck.
So with that, we can still kick this out. And it sounds like we did. Noelle
guess-
still hasn't been able to track down whether or not she reached out to the northern
Okay.
neighbor yet, but we can check into that and come back.
Okay, yeah, I think we push it to next week.
Okay.
But we did recently, was that policy in effect immediately where we changed how we handle
Yes.
these?
Yes, but I don't know when we got Jacob's bid, but it probably was, we probably rejected his bid before last Thursday. When did that policy go into effect?
Yeah, I think we did it a couple weeks ago. I just want to make sure that I understand because we changed the formula for how we were going to handle properties that don't sell at auction. So
So
if we could verify
Yeah,
those numbers,
I
and I'm
remember
sure
now.
that's what Jacob is after as well, but
let me go look into that. Yes, we did sort of set did we?
yeah, it was like a percentage, and then if it does,
We
if we don't
keep
get
dropping
bids,
it.
then we keep dropping the percentage. so,
Yes, I don't know this off the top of my head, but yeah,
Okay,
I believe that we did include that. And if we didn't, I'll make sure that we come back with that added to it. So.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
sounds good. Okay, so we will move item J2 to next week like we originally said. Let's see, we did 4 and 5. That brings us to J6, which is consideration of approval of amendment number 1 to an agreement between Yamhill County and Barclay Pennington LLC, Board Order 22-224 for transitional housing services for justice involved individuals, JII, increasing bed retention and total rate amount to $2,400 per month effective through May 31st, 2023 with annual auto renewal. And this is regarding, I believe, Kit, you weren't here for that. That was last year, but we approved an arrangement for transitional correctional housing. And we had, I believe, 4 beds, and this would increase the beds to 6, which matches the need, frankly. But it does increase our monthly rate from, I think it was $1,400 to $2,400, so another $1,000 a month. So I will move approval of item J6, but are there any questions around this? We had quite a lengthy discussion about this last year and had the homeowner, come in and talk about what their setup was. So,
Okay.
okay, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of item J6, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, item I7, consideration of approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Lynn, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties to continue governing the Mid-Willamette Jobs Council. And this is a housekeeping item for us to retain our workforce or regional workforce designation. So I will move approval of item J7. Is there further discussion?
None.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Item J8, consideration of approval in the matter of approving a professional services contract with Nelson Nygaard Consulting in the amount of $158,329 with a maximum not to exceed amount of $175,000. And it looks like last June, we did give authority for this. It's the bus stop installation project. We gave authority for 120,000. This is to increase that authority to 175,000.
So, so I can go ahead and talk. I think Cynthia had to stay home today because of the snow. So the authority that you guys granted last year was to Christian to negotiate the contract up to 120,000. Contract's now fully vetted. I guess we had to do a lot of negotiation on it. We did have to waive some indemnity stuff. And the price obviously went up. So per Christian, we needed to bring it back to you guys for new approval. So,
Okay.
Does
Any-
anybody know why it drug out so long? Or is that normal or?
I don't recall the initial discussion we had.
I don't think I was there for it, but so normally how it usually works is we do all that negotiation before we come to you. But Cynthia needed to get moving on it quickly, so she brought it to you before that negotiation took place. So that's sort of negotiations sometimes take a while, but you guys just, you see it at the end of it rather than at the front of it. And so there was just a lot of back and forth between their attorneys and ours, specifically about indemnification.
So are we approving the actual contract or is this just the?
You're gonna approve the contract, but you're gonna delegate authority to sign to Cynthia because her name is on the signature line. So I wrote the board order so that she gets delegated that authority. And it's already been signed by the contractor,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, so
Commission-
typically as part of the motions, it would be authorized the transit manager to, the board would approve and authorize the transit manager to sign the actual contract. Or me.
Okay.
It can't be you. It's already signed by the contractor.
Commissioner Starrett, any concerns over the increase?
No, Chair.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Did you make a motion? I can't remember.
I don't want to make a motion. Yeah, I have one more question.
Okay.
Since Cynthia's not here, is she comfortable with the increase? Does she know why the increase? I mean, I don't want to rehash anything. It's been going on long enough, and I wasn't there, obviously, last June.
If I were to venture a guess, because technically, I don't know if she had a number from them at the time that she came in front of the board last time. And I know that there were hourly rates that were also negotiated in that. So it could just be that it was more than she had a chance to estimate.
Initially thought it would be.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I think that because the negotiation took so long, there was a increase in wages between that period. Yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay. I will move approval of item J8. And if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, great. Motion passes. Thank you. Item J9 is discussion of received applications for the Emhoe County Direct Impact Grant Program. So, Commissioner Johnston, you weren't around for this discussion initially, but we had a bucket of money that we have sort of asked Willamette Workforce Partnership to market, if you will, for grants around recruitment and retention. And also for doing things to sort of positively affect the culture of business with the goal of recruitment and retention. I went back and looked at our original overview of what we had stated for the goals of this money. And we had said that grants will be available in amounts ranging from $10,000 to $30,000, per applicant in terms of award. But we also did state that funds may not be used for wages specifically or capital expenditures. And so I think we have some questions, or at least I do, around some of the applications because they do seem like they're focused on wages. And I'm not super clear on that. Let me just pull this forward. And Ken, do you recall it was, this was the grant that Willamette Workforce Partnership was asking for a percentage of to administer.
We already. So I'll take a step back and just. So fill in the blanks, we had $180,000 of ARPA funds identified for this program. We entered into an agreement that was approved by Board Order 22-338, which included a scope of work with the Willamette Workforce Partnership, which we essentially paid Willamette Workforce Partnership a lump sum of $5,000 to put together the program, market it, collect all the applications, do the solicitations, and then compile all the information and turn it over to the county, which is where we're at right now. As part of the program, there was an Exhibit A, which was the statement of work that really outlined and this was called the Yamhill County Business Direct Impact Grant Program. It's available to organizations based within the county. Grants are available to support programs and projects designed to develop new talent retention and recruitment, as well as internal cultural shifts for employees and managers. Let's see, eligibility. Eligible applicants will have principal operations within the county for at least the last 12 months, have an active business registration with the Oregon Secretary of State, be current on all federal, state, and local taxes, be current on all payroll taxes, unemployment insurance, and workers' comp. Not have any change in ownership within the past 12 months, not have any complaints or adverse decisions regarding wage and hour, health and safety, or discrimination. And then it goes into more detail about the funding allowability, which is funds may be used to support projects that improve the awardees' ability to recruit, retain the talent. They need to be successful.
Yeah, so we're looking at the same document. But I think it was 185, and then we agreed to a $5,000 administrative fee, right?
There's $180,000 available for grants.
Okay. So I think we adjusted this. Okay, so in that's kind of where I'm getting stuck though, is in that funding allowability paragraph, it says funds may not be used for wages or capital expenditures. And it sounds like, even though we didn't have the larger descriptions for some of these, it sounds like some of these are wage related. I mean, some of them literally say hire, pay wages, pay taxes and payroll, air handling systems, that might be considered a capital expenditure. So I'm not really sure where the line gets drawn there.
I believe the intent of that language, and Carrie, you can correct me if I'm wrong if you have a different interpretation. I think the intent was it wasn't for wage replacement. Probably more than, this is about, this isn't intended to supplant wages that you're already paying to use these funds. The intent is if you have a proposal, you're doing enhancements, recruitment bonuses, something along those lines, education or something. I'm just trying to think of the gamut that might be available, but the intent and with the language was, you can't use it to replace wages that you're already paying. It's not intended to supplant funds.
Okay. Okay, so we are being asked to kind of define how we want to award these. Whether it's just a flat fee to every applicant or in some other way. I'm gonna just highlight the fact that at our last Jobs Council meeting, Commissioner Johnston, you were there. Willamette Workforce Partnership specifically identifies the top 3 needs in our region as number 1 is healthcare, number 2 is manufacturing, and number 3 was tech. So I kind of, I take that frame of reference when I'm looking at these, and perhaps that's something that we want to focus on in terms of awards. If you look at breakdown per industry sector, healthcare is at 180,000 if you're fully funding the asks. And then manufacturing separately is at 171. So it's a big chunk of the money, if not all the money. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there as a starting point on discussion, because I'm not sure where you guys want to go with that. I just, I'm just keeping in mind that Willamette Workforce Partnership really is honing in on healthcare and manufacturing predominantly for their job recruitment, retention, training up in terms of skills and the future needs of the workforce. So
I think another thing to consider also is received a grant in the last 5 years.
right.
My understanding is St. Crusair has in some capacity received a grant or something related to an economic development partnership we had with them years ago. I would want to just vet that, clarify that.
Yeah, because it says no on this list. But that only goes back 5 years.
One of the things that stood out for me, because we also indicated in our initial overview that the grant recipients will have 12 months to complete their projects or, expense the funds. So when I see things like healthcare benefits, that just really, seems kind of an odd thing. If you have an award for $10,000, how much are you really going to be able to provide to an employee or employees for healthcare? Given what we know about the healthcare costs, it's not going to get you very far. So
That, and it doesn't seem like it fits into what Ken was just saying of can't go towards current employment. It needs to go towards new employment. And so I guess if you're hiring somebody on for the same job and the new employee gets more above and beyond, that almost seems to me that they're targeting current employees.
Well,
Which
it's also a
you
tool.
could.
Okay.
What I
Yeah.
was saying is I was speaking directly because we had may not be used for wages. And so I think the intent was it wasn't meant to supplant wages. But if like as a retention strategy that you're going to, I'm just going to pick up an example. We don't provide an EAP program. I'm going to roll out an EAP program to help retain employees. That would be an employment enhancement to maybe increase retention for that business that they're not doing at that point. So I think it would be okay to do that. Or if you're not offering a healthcare benefit and you're deciding to offer that or something like that, I think it'd be okay.
And that makes sense. I guess to that,
Yeah.
to that conversation though, then if somebody does use it towards that, there's no longevity to it. It's a one time you're done and then your cost for that health insurance that you offered is now gone.
Right. Which doesn't feel like a very responsible way
No.
of us awarding taxpayer money. So for me, the healthcare, applications are kind of off the table. I just don't see how that's gonna work.
Yeah. Did you catch that, Mary?
I did not.
Yeah, so the question was around sustainability on some of these items and the suggestion Carrie mentioned is taking a look at the application and seeing if they actually address that or, is this a one-time thing? It's one and done. Once we use the grant funds, that's the end of it. Or do they address that they actually had a plan for a longer term sustainability? And so we may want to take a look at that application as well.
Thank you. I had a question about the specifics. Some of these, again, it might mean looking at the applications, but some of these are seem lofty and aspirational, and I'm wondering what the specifics are of, in other words, asking for a specific dollar amount, and what is that based on? Because if you have, let's see, employee personal and professional growth. What does that mean? Is it based on a particular training? Is it based on any specific determined need or identified need? I just sometimes think that when you put a dollar amount and it's you sort of a shotgun approach, what is it top?
Yeah, and I guess the challenges that staff that we're going to have is, I think any questions around the intent or what that means, we have to rely on the application and what was provided in the application, because I know I can't speak for how that's defined or what that means. It's really going to be in the application.
Well, I guess I'm just kind of, do we want to look at this through that framework of highest needs, based on the work that Willamette Workforce Partnership does, healthcare and manufacturing, and then kind of go from there and break it down? Because I don't feel like the flat fee 5,000 is going to do much for anybody, so I don't really see how that's going to work.
I agree with that. I mean, I'm just going through here and I'm like checking off ones that wouldn't go, they're not going to be sustainable. It's like it's a raise. I don't know, training for staff would be sustainable as a one-time project. Tuition scholarships would be okay, even though you'd want that to be programmed to go longer for tuitions, especially for healthcare. But it could also be just a one-time scholarship for existing employees or to attract new employees.
Well, I looked at that scholarship program for the ARC Foundation. It's training for nurse assistant 1 and 2, and it's about $1,200 per course, and that would definitely cover a couple of applicants, which would be fulfilling a need that we have for nursing assistants. So that would get what, maybe 4 in there. And the only thing I would ask them is they do discriminate on the basis of vaccine status, and I would like them to reconsider that. I know we have a bill in session this year, which would make those types of requirements illegal. So just something to look at there.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of hoping for a framework coming out of this discussion on how we're gonna look at these. I don't feel like I know enough about each one of these to say, well, this seems like a good value, this doesn't, and that doesn't really seem fair. So, if we can get to some type of agreement on how we're gonna tackle this, that would be helpful.
Childcare might be good to prioritize.
The intended impact of these grants is to improve the awardees' ability to recruit and retain the talent they need to be successful in their industry and offer their employees long-term meaningful employment.
In fact, childcare might be the top one that would fit right in with that.
Sure, except for one of them is increasing wages, which means current wages.
Which I think that would be okay if you're increasing again, it's not I think the issues that we had before is not necessarily supplanting existing wages, not using this as a revenue replacement to
Right.
pay wages, but if this was in order to get more competitive, I need to apply an increase, and I would use this to apply that increase or apply a recruitment bonus or a benefit enhancement, it would be eligible under this program. It's just again, the whole issue with the wages is the supplanting. These aren't intended to pay wages that a business is already paying.
I just want to note that we also have $2 million or more to give to childcare needs as well. So
And this
That's
is
still
limited
sitting
at
there.
185.
180,000.
180. Well, it doesn't sound like we're ready to make any decisions. We don't want to take some more time to sort through this.
I need more time for sure.
Okay.
Would the board be, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Starrett unmuted. I want to give her a chance.
Thank you, Ken. No, I would need more time. And I also think if we can better define our terms in terms of what's priority within this context, because there's a lot of different applications here. So I think maybe if we can come to an agreement of what is going to be priority for us, whether it's a sector or a specific particular end, I would feel more comfortable.
And I was just going to mention, if the board would find it helpful, we could put together some recommendations on like a scoring methodology or a way to kind of like what we do for other grants is we'll take those priorities and basically give you a form that you could go through and complete and score each application. I think some, if there's obvious ones that you're seeing on the list that you don't believe is consistent with the intent of the funds, you could narrow those, but there's a way to prioritize, like Commissioner Starrett was saying, down to business sectors. Even though we don't necessarily have them grouped, I think we could group those by business sectors. So just putting it out there that if the emphasis was healthcare, not healthcare as an added benefit, but healthcare as an industry. If that was a priority, we could, that's one way to kind of filter it down. The second part would be, have they received previous grants? Have they received outside funding? That would be another way to kind of filter the list. The third part would be, again, the intended use of the funds. If there's certain areas like childcare was one that you talked about before that, we think that's a good one. That's an important one. It would be another way that you could apply some points and have kind of a worksheet that may help kind of filter this list. If the board's open to it, we could, Carrie and I could work on something and present that to the board.
Well, Carrie already presented that to us in terms of spreadsheets. She broke them out into industry sector and then is.
I think with the information I have, I think I'm good.
Okay.
So I don't think I need any more. It's just, you would just be compiling what's already here into more fine tuned, but see, and that's what I was gonna ask. If I can go through and make some check marks and request
that.
a dozen applications or something, that would be great.
We can do that.
Okay.
I guess my question is though, do we want to prioritize an industry? Because that reduces a lot of confusion and workload and,
You can, but then you might end up missing one that still fits with the protocols. I don't know. I would not. I would want to see them, I guess, all on there.
Then the other option that we've done in the past on other things would be as if each commissioner basically took the applications and ranked them. And then we could take those ranks. And then that way, you know, we can collect, you know, the scores or ranking that each commissioner has applied. And then we're able to kind of narrow to where there was common ground on, you know, this one had 3 votes and at least narrow it down. And then we can figure out, well, based on that criteria, here's 1 through 30. And based on, you know, then you'd be able to have that discussion, and maybe that
On it
would stand out. And then we could start applying the funding based on the rank that each commissioner and what that score looks like. And then we could just start looking at what the grant awards would look like until the funds run out. And then that would be the line. So if the board would be open to that.
I kind of like that.
Yes, agreed.
What was that? Sorry. Commissioner Starrett?
No, I think that would be helpful. And we have done that in the past, as Ken mentioned, where the commissioners looked at the applications and got into some of the detail that we don't see here. So that would be helpful.
Okay, so that's what we'll look at. Any other concerns or? Okay.
What's our timeline on these?
Timeline.
There's no specific timeline associated. I know we're getting. Right.
It's ARPA.
But we
Yeah.
are getting inquiries from businesses that have applied for this grant program that are very interested to know the status of
Sure.
of their application and proposal.
Yeah, because how long ago was this?
This closed, we opened it up January, and then it closed in end of January,
It's over a year.
just in the last few months.
Oh,
Because this agreement, I don't, see if I have a date.
when did the allocation happen? When did the 180?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's been
Yeah,
quite a while.
got
then.
it.
so the agreement was in November.
Got it.
That we approved for Willamette Workforce Partnership to facilitate this. Along the same lines when SEDCOR did the supply chain localization grant, this both occurred along the same path. And it was all identified under the impacted industries category for the ARPA funds.
Okay.
Okay, so commissioners will review applications and implement some type of scoring, our own scoring method.
Well, what I'd recommend doing because it sounded like at least Commissioner Starrett and Commissioner Johnston like the idea of just ranking the applications. You know, whether you apply a scoring or how you come to that decision on what's number 1 and what's 30. I think it's up to you.
Okay.
Know that we passed along that $10,000 to $30,000 restriction to limit. That was the first time I'm hearing that, and so
Yeah.
there would have to be a decision to how you want to manage that with the asks. They're everything from 5,000 to 50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think we advertise that.
Is that in the same sheet you have? Commissioner Starrett, we're in the original sort of overview sheet that I have, it says grants will be made available in amounts ranging from 10 to 30,000, but we didn't advertise that with Willamette Workforce Partnership. So that's why you're seeing asks of up to 50,000.
Yeah, because I'm not sure.
I want to say we revised that number up. I don't-
That's why I added a note, spreadsheets that said if somebody gave a range, I gave them the lowest end of that range as a fixed number. Several people applied and said, for instance, between 20 and 50,000. So then I would just give them the 20,000. So if you have some methodology that you want to modify those ask amounts. Maybe if they're less, once they're less than 10.
If that was the rules going in and they're aware of it, I'd say we could do that, but since we didn't advertise it that way, we probably gotta keep it.
Yeah, and that's not included in the attachment to the scope of work for the contract. So I'd have to go back and re-listen to the discussions around this.
Yeah.
Because obviously that number was pulled. So,
Intentionally or just?
Well, maybe I'm not remembering it right, but we might have lifted it to 50. I can't remember.
why
But
I
it's
don't
in the
remember
original.
either.
But then again, this also says that Willamette Workforce Partnership is requesting 5% admin fee of $9,000. So that's not correct either. So at some point we did adjust this.
yeah, because it all changed because it was a flat administration fee of
Mhm.
$5,000.
Okay. So that's not really something we're quote unquote enforcing, but I suppose if you want to apply that to your scoring, nobody gets more than 30,000 or whatever in an effort to be equitable, we certainly could. So. Okay. We're all clear on that. Next steps for that. So we will postpone that until commissioners are ready with their scoring or levels. Make sure I got the right one here. Okay, I think that brings us to item K, public hearings. We have none today. And item L, announcements. Commissioners, any announcements? Okay, I'll go first.
I had one, but it was from a city council meeting and it's nothing important. But I didn't bring it with me.
Okay.
And I think the problem got solved too. It was when I was at Sheridan City Council meeting, there was some questions about rates on the Yamhill County Transit website versus the rates that were known for certain routes on Saturday going out through Sheridan. But when I followed up on it, it seemed like it was all corrected. So
Okay.
we're good.
So a couple things from ODOT. We did confer, I did confirm with Mr. Walker that the bypass is delayed because of the PLA agreement. They're still hoping to have some type of construction happen this year, but it will be delayed to the point where they won't finish until 2026, I think is what he said. It's 2 years. Is that right? Maybe 2025. So just a quick update on that. And then there's been a lot of testimony happening on the tolling. I know this board has weighed in on the tolling issue on I-5 and I-205 from a regional perspective. The Interstate Bridge Replacement Group, which is what they're calling the former CRC project now, has suddenly changed the scope of the project, which is why you're seeing these massive increases in the cost of that bridge replacement. And so they're looking at the old design. I'm not going to go into the specifics, but essentially what that means is that the tolling estimates that have been released as part of the environmental statement are pretty shocking. They said that on 205, and of course we've discussed 205 specifically here in our meetings, but 205, the average cost to a driver who is not commuting during peak commute times, it will be $600 a year. If you are driving and commuting on 205, the full span, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, that's $2,200 per year in toll fees per person. So a pretty shocking number. That does not include I-5. And if you have lived in that area, you know that a lot of people use both freeways, frankly. So we will continue to weigh in on that. There are some new bills that were introduced to prohibit ODOT from tolling because of these shocking impacts. And so I'll be watching that closely. Obviously, we have folks who commute and who live in our county, and you know, freight transportation, all of that stuff is connected to this, and costs will go up significantly. So we're watching that closely. I got a note that planning commission applicants were postponed because of the weather tonight.
Yep.
So the folks that have applied to serve on our planning commission will be postponed to next week. That may then bump out some things, but we'll kind of see how that goes. You know, we won't be able to approve those folks at our next meeting, which I think was the goal. So we'll have to push that out a little bit. I mentioned Newburgh City County Dinner was canceled tonight. And then Sgt Young has posted the emergency warming shelters on the Facebook page. So if you want to share those, just to make sure that people are aware of where those are at, that would be appreciated. I don't think I have anything else. Commissioner Sterrett?
Nothing, Chair.
Nope. Okay. Ken, Christian, yeah, announcements? Okay. Hearing none. We will adjourn the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for February 23rd, 2023. It is